Good morning, beloveds. It's an odd morning. I woke up at 5 this morning when the storm rolled through, and then when my alarm actually went off at 6:30, I saw lightning. So I opted to turn my alarm off and go back to bed rather than go for a run. And my heart hurts today because I have a lot of friends in Colorado, and I don't I don't know what happened in the grocery store in Boulder, Colorado. And honestly, from the sounds of it, we may never know what happened in the grocery store in Boulder, but there's a whole lot of people that definitely need to be surrounded in prayer. So, yeah, I I definitely make it a point to, when I know that there's something going on in the world, to ask you who watch these videos live to pray. And if you happen to be watching this later on the YouTube, then you can pray then too. There's no time limit on prayers. Even if an event happened years ago, you can still pray. Yeah, for all the fact that a storm rolled through, it looks like it's going to be a beautiful day. The sun is out, the birds are singing. It's springtime. So I that's where we are. That's where we are. But we're getting pretty close to finishing the year of the 365 Science of Mind. And so at the end of March, because I know I started this, I'm not sure, to within the next couple of days I will have actually started, but I'm because I got better as I did this. I'm gonna finish March, and then at the end of March, at the beginning of April, I'm moving on. I'm gonna continue to do these daily live streams, and I'm gonna switch to this book. I know it's backwards, and I'm sorry about that, but just so you can see the cover. But this is also Ernest Holmes. It's Ernest Holmes and Raymond Charles Barker, and it's 365 Days of Richer Living, Daily Inspiration. So we'll get into that, and we'll see what that looks like. And then a year from now, depending on what the world looks like, we'll either move on to another book or move on to something else. I'm not sure. There is, Jesse found a book about, it's 365 days of women in New Thought. And so I may get my hands on that one for 2022. But we'll get there. We'll get there. And as always, I am archiving these talks not on the Creative Life. Creative Life Spiritual Center has a YouTube channel, but I'm leaving that especially for Jesse. All of the services. So mostly Jesse, and then all of the other speakers and the soul sessions and things like that. That's what's on the Creative Life YouTube channel. What I did was I started my own, the Running Rev Ryan YouTube channel, and that's where I've archived these live streams. So if there's any particular day you want to go back and look at, that's where they are archived. So today is March 23rd. And our title is Non-Resistance. So let's see what Ernest has to say about non-resistance. Gandhi built his whole philosophy of life around the theory of nonviolence. An ancient Chinese sage said that all things are possible to the person who can perfectly practice inaction. And the Bible exclaims, "Be still and know that I am God." Surely some great truth must be contained in these simple thoughts. There is a spiritual consciousness that, through the power of non-resistance, can change a condition that appears solid. By way of illustration, let us think of an iceberg. When the sun rays daily fall upon it, it will dissolve. That which is an obstruction becomes liquid. Such is the power of nonviolence. There is something flowing in, around, and through all things that nothing can resist. This is the something that the great and the wise have known about and have used, but too often our way is the way of resistance. We try to change the outer without changing the inner first. Today, I practice non-resistance, disregarding everything that seems to contradict the reality in which I believe. I affirm that it is operating in my life, turning resolutely from everything that denies the good I wish to experience. I affirm that good. There is no situation or condition that resists this transcendent thought. For I proclaim the omnipotence of God, the guidance of the mind that knows all things, and the peace that is beyond every confusion. And the Bible quote is, I say unto you that ye resist not evil. And that is Matthew 5:39. And immediately what springs to mind is, and I honestly don't know who said it, it probably was Ernest, but about where your attention goes is where your power goes, which is one of the things that when you're working on the solution to a problem, you want to focus on the solution, not the problem. Because wherever your attention is, that's where your power is. So if you're focused on the problem, you're going to have more problem. And if you're focused on the solution, then you will find the solution. It's literally about this is where turning the other cheek comes from. One of the many interpretations. And there's been a lot of talk about Gen X lately, and I'm Gen X. And so I grew up in the war on drugs, and we can see how well that worked. And it seems like anytime we use that word war on, we're focused on the fight, not the healing. And so it literally is about changing our language. It literally is about focusing on the end that we want, not what we have to do to get there. And that is kind of a cornerstone in Science of Mind, is we're about the what, not about the how. So it's like, tell me, or in this case, tell Spirit what you want, but don't tell Spirit how to give you what you want, because Spirit has a myriad of pathways to get you to what it is that you have stated that you want. You might think of 3 or 4. And now if you're super creative, you might think of a lot more than that. But why limit Spirit? And so that's kind of that idea of non-resistance. And there's so much more. I mean, he started out talking about Gandhi. And I know a little bit about Gandhi. And really, honestly, I think the one thing you can't resist is love. That's the one thing that nothing can stand in the face of love. Nothing can stand in the face of love. Anything done with love, it's gonna wear everything away and down. So that kind of is like the underpinning of non-resistance is the truth of love. And I'm talking about love with a capital L, not love as we can blithely apply that word to everything. So Gandhi built his whole philosophy of life around the theory of nonviolence. An ancient Chinese sage said that all things are possible to the person who can perfectly practice inaction. When I read that line, immediately I was reminded of one of my professors in ministerial school, Amit Goswami, who would frequently tell us I took 2 of his classes, maybe 3 of them, But he would tell us in our class that we're human beings, not human doings. And so it's not just is it okay to rest, but it's supremely important that we rest. That we spend so much time doing that we don't ever truly rest. And so that's something that, it goes back to that non-resistance. It's like sometimes we're so busy doing that we're completely unaware of what's going on around us, or we are so busy doing because we are trying to ignore what's going on around us. It's like, well, let me work over here so that I don't have to deal with this. And we all do it. But sometimes what we need to do is sit down and rest and stop resisting whatever it is that needs to be done. I'm also reading a Reader's Digest, and I just hit the article and I want to go back and do it. And they have a section called the Genius section, and and that's what it's about. It's about doing nothing. I mean, I think we've gotten to this point in our culture where doing nothing is a bad thing. And we wonder why we're so tired all the time. We are human beings, not human doings. And the Bible exclaims, "Be still and know that I am God." And that is one of the benefits of spiritual practice, because some of them are, even if you're doing like meditation and you're doing a walking meditation, you're giving your body something to do so that your mind can rest. Surely some great truth must be contained in these simple thoughts. There is a spiritual consciousness that, through the power of non-resistance, can change a condition that appears solid. And that really goes back to that, where is your attention? Is your attention on the problem or the solution? Is your attention on the activity, or is your attention on resting? By way of illustration, let's think of an iceberg. When the sun's rays daily fall upon it, it will dissolve. That which was an obstruction becomes liquid. Such is the power of nonviolence. And such is the power of love. Because love absolutely can wear away resistance. Ask anybody that works with animals, especially animals with trust issues. And it's hard work. It is hard work. But they come to it every day with love. I imagine teachers have a similar, when they have, I'm going to use air quotes, difficult students. Every day they come into their job with love. And they gradually wear down the resistance of that student. So love can melt an iceberg of a whole lot of other emotions. There is something flowing in, around, and through all things that nothing can resist. I think he's talking about love. This is the something that the great and wise have known about and have used. But too often our way is the way of resistance. We try to change the outer without changing the inner first. And that is that call to doing our spiritual work. That is our call to doing our spiritual work. If you want your outer life to change, you can change all of the people in your life. But you're still going to attract the same people into your life if you haven't done your inner work and changed you. And I'm not saying changing the people around you is a bad thing, because frequently there are people in our lives that just aren't necessarily healthy. And it's not that we can't invite them back into our lives later, but right now they just don't need to be there. But if we don't change ourselves, then we're just going to attract that same energy back. It may have a different face. So we need to sit down and do our work first. I want to say it's a Rumi quote, but that's exactly what it is. Somebody's taken the Serenity Prayer, It's like about changing the environment and the wisdom to know that I okay, it's about changing the world, and I'm gonna get it wrong, so I'm just paraphrasing here. It's about I set out to change the world, and then wisdom told me that I had to change myself, and then the world around me will shift. We got to do our inner work. And frequently, that's what we're resisting, is doing our work. It's like, well, if I could just fix everybody around me, then life would be great. Well, the only person we can fix is ourselves. And that's the truth, with a capital T. So when we fix ourselves, not that there's anything wrong with us, there's nothing wrong with it, but when we do our inner work, then we shift, and the way we interact with the world shifts, and then the world around us shifts. And the people that we interact with will change. It'll change because of the way we interact with them. And sometimes people, their behavior will shift towards us, and then they stay in our lives. And sometimes they move themselves out of our lives. And we didn't have to do anything other than love ourselves a little bit more. We try to change the outer without changing the inner first. All right, so Ernest says, today I will practice non-resistance. And that does not mean being a doormat. That absolutely does not mean being a doormat. Let me be clear about that. It's not about being a doormat. Non-resistance is not about putting yourself in unsafe situations and then just letting what happen. But it is about focusing on what you want and not how to get there, and not worrying about fighting what's going on. It's about, okay, this is what I'm working on. The solution is what I'm working on. So today I practice non-resistance, disregarding everything that seems to contradict the reality in which I believe. So I'm going to focus on the reality. My attention and my energy are going to be on the reality with a capital R, which is made up of love with a capital L. I affirm that it is operating in my life, turning resolutely from anything that denies the good I wish to experience. I affirm that good. There is no situation or condition that resists this transcendent thought. For I proclaim the omnipotence of God, the guidance of the mind that knows all things, and the peace that is beyond every confusion. So Matthew says, I say unto you that ye resist not evil. You turn away from it. You turn your back on it. You focus on, I would say, the opposite. You focus on the good. You focus on doing the good work rather than fighting the evil, because the good will gradually displace the evil. So non-resistance, like I said, it's not about being a doormat, and it is not about turning your back in an unsafe situation. And it does encourage you to get out of an unsafe situation. If a situation is unsafe for you, then that is not your work to do. Removing yourself from that situation is your work to do. And then the situation will continue to resolve itself without your necessary participation, because your first responsibility is you. And then you go and do your work. And then there may be a time for you to re-enter a situation. So our mission today, should we choose to accept it, is to practice non-resistance. What does that look like? That looks like focusing on the good. That looks like working with the good. That looks like working towards the good. And that looks like letting go of the how. It looks like showing up and doing the work that is in front of us. And it looks like taking care of ourselves. And it looks like being human beings, not human doings. It looks like resting when we need to rest. And it looks like practicing love. with a capital L, even when we do it from a distance, i.e. Boulder, Colorado. The only thing we can do is practice love. Right there. That we can know for these people, that we can pray for these people, that we can love with these people. And keep on loving people. All right. And so that is non-resistance. I admit that I'm not always good at non-resistance. I am a maturing redhead, and resistance is kind of my MO. And I'm working on that. Working on that. So that mission today is definitely for me. But as always, I encourage you to do something loving for yourself, do something kind for yourself, do something compassionate for yourself, whatever that looks like today. One of the things that I do suggest is if the sun has come out, which it has after our storms this morning, go get a face full of sun. Early morning face full of sun. It really does help to wake the brain up, to clear out the fog, to clear out the cobwebs, and just make the day a little bit better. And drink plenty of water. Always. Hydrating is super important. Self-care is super important. And it's the small things. I mean, don't get me wrong, the big things are really important too. But the small things in the long run are what keep us going. The little things. So, please take into your heart that you are a beloved child of God, in whom God is well pleased, always, forever. Partly because God doesn't know time. We, as mortal creatures, are time-bound, but God is not. Spirit is everywhere and every when. And Spirit always loves you. Because you're one of Spirit's creations. And you get to co-create with that Spirit the world that you live in. And so we activate all of those qualities of God, the harmony, the unity, the creativity, the peace, the joy, the love. And we open the windows of our souls. And we allow the breath of heaven to remind us that that is where we live now. Heaven is where we live now. But it is our responsibility to open our eyes and see it around us. Because the more we look for, the more we see. And the more kindness and compassion and love that we practice on ourselves, the more we have to give away. All right, beloveds. I'm going to move into the process of my day. And I encourage you to do what you need to do to make it a fantastic day. All right. Reverend David will be on around 5 p.m. with the Facebook Live, the daily guides, and I will be back with you at 9 a.m. So take care of yourself today and know that you are loved.